So we are back, video number 11, and today we're going to touch up on periodization, what the hell it is. Probably something people don't realize that it's something that happens every single day, every single month, every single year. Most often it's used in a training setting. People who are training, they're more commonly using this term, but in real life we have periods of seasons, business growing and failing, you going to school, graduating, whatever, and so on and so on. Everything repeats itself, and to get the most out of it, you should be having some kind of plan for different periods to get the most out of it. So let's dig into that. What do you think is most commonly misunderstood thing about periodization to begin with, and what's the actual definition?
So as far as the actual definition, like in the dictionary or whatever, I'm not really 100% sure. I haven't actually looked it up, but the gist of it is planning, right? The gist of it is executing on a plan is periodization. But the thing that I feel is most overlooked, especially with people that are trying to change their body, is they do not take into account their life in the sense of, I want to lose this much body fat, but all the intricacies that are going to involve you losing this much body fat or changing this body composition is going to take away from all these things that are currently happening in my life, or have to change those things. So the biggest real thing that I see that everybody overlooks is, I didn't account for that. Like, it just happened. Like, that is the words that come out of their mouth all the time. Oh, I didn't even realize I had to account for that, because periodization means how everything is going to run. Not just like when you go train and when you go eat. Those are just periods momentarily, but it's like, okay, I'm going to have to do these for 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Well, what's happening in those 8 or 10 weeks for the next foreseeable 8 or 10 weeks? Are you going to be traveling a lot, or are you actually going to be home and at a steady schedule? Because those are two different scenarios that will either help or make harder whatever fitness goal you might have, or business goals, right? They can't contradict each other, because then you end up basically spinning your wheels in both. That's my opinion of what is the most misunderstood about periodization. Well, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think that's so noticeable because we started to do these videos in a sequence we did, that these are the things that you need to periodize, kind of prepare yourself for what's going to come. And if you don't do it in that sequence, you're just making everything much harder. Like we discussed hydration, how long might that take you to actually get used to drinking more water? And people give up within 2 days, as they don't realize, hey, no, that period needs to be nearly a month, if not longer, before
Yeah.
your body gets really, really well adapted to it. I spoke yesterday to one of my strongman clients, and he was like, oh, nobody has ever given me the plan in a way that you do, that I feel difference within days. Before, he was just eat big and get strong. Well, no, that's not how it works. But there was still a period of him in his brain to adapt. Hey, this is going to happen. But yeah, I think this most misunderstood thing is that people think about this only in a sense of gym, and then they go home, they fall out with somebody, or they watch some kind of news or whatever. It affects them mentally. And we already touched about this in video about how to survive Tony Robbins event, that mentality and that physiology will affect your ability to digest and also rest and all those kind of things, which people don't take into account. So periodization, in a sense, needs to be literally lined out with everything else that's happening in your life. And the more efficient you can get with it, the better results you're going to get. Now, I always mention about my travels and all these kind of things. Hey, when I travel, I do this, I do this, I do this, only because I acknowledge the pattern, what's going to happen with my body. And I'm not going to try to stick to training plan when I know my body and mind is focused on something else, recovering from flights, learning new things, and so on and so forth. So pushing me in a gym it's just gonna backfire on me. And I see a lot of people trying to do that in those events as well. And say, oh, I need to stick to these meals, I need to stick to this training plan. And I'm like, no, you are literally harming yourself now. And you're gonna give up in 2 weeks because you're not gonna see any results anywhere, and you're gonna blame that plan is not working. When plan is not working, it's just not lined up with your lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah. And then just to kind of like to add more clarity to that exact scenario you just mentioned about, um, people going traveling or to events or whatever, right? Or really busy lifestyle as far as business and outside life. And they're like, well, I tracked my calories, I did all my workouts. It was really, really freaking hard because I was so busy with all these other things. And then they don't realize that the fact that their mental priorities were other things meant that the training wasn't quite as effective. The diet wasn't quite like it should have been to help them more easily be mentally prepared for the busyness of their life along with the training, right? That's what you mean by lined up with their lifestyle. It's not just that, oh, he either needed to train or not train. It's like, no, the style of training probably could have changed and been slightly better adapted to that situation so that the guy isn't, mentally fatigued, both from the things he's actively trying to learn or accomplish, right? All the other stuff in his life and the training, which then ends up being exactly what you said. I tried really, really hard. I kept everything in line. I accomplished and ticked off all the boxes. But 2 weeks later, I'm kind of in the same spot. That's what I'm saying is you end up spinning your wheels on both ends. It makes it harder up here and you get less results. So that's discouraging on two sides. Oh, I'm mentally drained. I'm physically exhausted and I didn't get very good results. This really
And I
sucks.
put so much work into it as well.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Like you're literally in that scenario. If it's not periodized correctly, you're literally setting yourself up for exaggerated mental fatigue and discouragement. That's literally what's going on in that scenario. It's self-sabotage at that point. Not that you willingly knew that, but you willingly executed on those things, right? Those are two different things. Willingly executed just means that you know how to follow a plan. That's excellent. But willingly knowing that you're spinning your wheels is what periodization is, right? If you lay things out and be like, okay, this is the limiting factor for continuing or maintaining my body composition, then those are the only things that need to happen when you are mentally doing something different or really engaging in something very specific, like a Tony Robbins. You paid a ton of money to be there to learn new things. Why would you circumvent that when that overall can be a very positive experience if you're all in mentally by also being or trying to be all in with your diet and your training? It goes, well, no, if there's a 2 week period of long travel or 10 days or whatever, you should periodize your training and your eating so that you don't go backwards and make minor pushes to the front, but they don't cost you anything so that you can be fully immersed in.
And oftentimes people don't understand not getting worse is often the step forward.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with one of the guys I've been working for many, many years. And he's in his late 40s and whatnot. And he made a comment, oh, I'm not changing. And I'm like, how many of your friends at same age look anywhere near as you do, feel as good as you do, have really good connection with your kids and whatnot, and would say exactly the same, that they are not improving? I'm like, you're not getting worse is the best thing that can happen to you. And he's like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I'm like, this is the result, because the guy is with visible six-pack and everything. And I'm like, dude, not many people work a lot like that. And then he made a comment, yeah, I think I realize now that working with you has made me kind of set standards completely different, what I accept as normal now. And I'm like, yes, that's great.
Yeah,
But just
absolutely.
acknowledge that's staying same. Oftentimes when you have extremely busy lifestyle, you have business to run, you have family, kids, friends, all those kind of things, you will not getting worse is usually the progress.
Yeah. I mean, not everybody is here to be, an elite strongman or in the competitive ranks of strongman or any other sport. That's what people got to understand. We're not really speaking to these people. Those people are basically have set up their lives to revolve
Just to do it
around
right.
training, not the other way around. So
Mm.
when people that are normal follow these other, elite strongman or elite powerlifters, they forget that their periodization is flipped around. It's on its head. Their periodization follows their training, not the other way around.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
it,
they adjust their lifestyle to their things. If they
yeah.
go on holidays, they're gonna go to the best gym available. If they go on a business trip, they're gonna make sure that, oh, at least I can get to these training sessions in and whatnot. Uh,
Mhm.
Whereas people who are not obsessed of competing is very high level, uh, they should really prioritize health. It's always about
Yeah,
health, you
yeah.
know, because
Because at
you
the end of
can't
the
be at your best physically, aesthetically, and all those kind of things if you're not healthy.
it's really that simple. So step one is, going back through the whole series of these are the things that line you up to cultivate health and cultivate good biological processes all the time, so that when you do have a period of time, right? See what I did there? A period of time for, 3 months of like, hey, my life is actually going to be pretty mellow for these next 3 months as far as other business endeavors or travel or whatever, and I haven't gone backwards. I've actually been continuing the development of all of my consistency with all the baseline parameters, that I don't have to spend 6 weeks getting all those online. They're already online. So now when I start dieting in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm seeing fantastic results.
Mm.
Or when I start going to the gym very regularly and pushing my workouts with a little bit more volume, I start seeing more fullness and muscles within 2 or 3 weeks, right? Because everything that is, well, I'm going to say everything, right? But even more importantly is things like fat loss and building muscle. Those are all enzyme related, energy and enzyme related. Okay. So, with all the baseline physiology that we've been talking about previously, we're lining up the ability for your body to have energetics correctly. That means
Mm.
you're not lacking enzymes for energy production.
Yeah.
Now, when you start dieting, enzymes don't have to be fueled for quite as long to come online, right? So here's a perfect example. If somebody comes to me and they have not dieted in like 3 years, right? And they're like, I'm in a slump. I need to hire you to get in shape. I'm honest with him. It's going to be 6 weeks of no change. There's going to be no change. We're going to lower your calories. We're going to increase your steps. We're going to get all these things online, and your body's not going to change. And they go, what? Why is that not going to happen? I'm like, because it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for your enzymes in your body to even get upregulated and online enough to execute the changes that we want. So
Yes.
we might as well not, this is very common. I went in a 400 calorie deficit for 3 weeks. Nothing happened. So then I lowered it again, 200 calories, and I went another 2 or 3 weeks and nothing happened. I'm like, it was barely going to start. But at that point, I'm like, you see what I'm saying? Like at that
Absolutely.
point, yeah. And so all of a sudden it's like, no, 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 no. Let's lower it down. Let's start getting things online. It's going to take 6 weeks. And then at the 6 week mark, now it's like, okay, let's do a little test. Let's actually see where your energetics are. And if the feedbacks are positive, then it goes, okay, great. Now we're ready to start the diet. Now we're ready to start the training. That 6 week period that I just talked about, if you're doing all these things that we talked about in the previous episodes, that 6 week period gets cut back dramatically. So
Absolutely. And things we talked about in previous videos can be done all the time without really taxing on your time outside of whatever else you do, because that's something you should be doing anyway.
correct. So that's why I'm saying periodization starts to open the door to pivot and execute on things very quickly, like at a drop of a hat. Like, when I just stated before this, hey, I'm going to have a period of time that's coming up in the next 2 or 3 months. You don't even need to know that ahead of more than maybe 2 weeks, right? I don't need to know that you're going to have a period of 2 or 3 months of ability to push hard. I don't need to know that 6 months ahead of time. I don't even need to know that 1 month ahead of time. You
Yeah.
call me up in 2 weeks, and if you've been doing all these basics, you call me up in 2 weeks, and I can tell you, oh yeah, you're going to be ready in 2 weeks. No problem. We'll jump right on it, because the basics are already being met, and you don't have to spend time accumulating the enzyme
Mm.
and all the energy pools and structures that need to happen to even execute on what you want, right? So Periodization, doing the basic stuff first and keeping them on the line all the time and making sure that they're not taxing up here and become habits, right? Now your periodization starts to open up of, hey, my book is showing me that I have a month or 6 weeks to push really hard in my training, and I haven't had to for a little while, and I haven't gone backwards. This is great. This is a great opportunity to, maybe I want my shoulders to be a little bit bigger, or maybe I want to lose a little bit more body fat, right? So now you can really push hard in that specific thing that you want for that period of time. And then once you get done with that, hey, I have to travel a lot more now. So then we just maintain what you accomplished in those 6 weeks. And you can easily do that by just dialing back to the basics and only executing training that establishes a baseline for the new adaptation that you just made.
And this is why you can see oftentimes in some social media posts, or 6 weeks change and 8 weeks change and this and that, and people look amazing, but they don't mention, hey, you trained 3 years with me before we did these 6 weeks.
Correct.
You know?
And even further, right? So especially like in social media, like with people that are very popular, again, their life revolves around the training. Okay. So that also means that their enzymes are almost never starting from zero. In other words, they're the type of people that diet probably twice every single year for like 8 weeks, right? They diet in the spring and then they diet through the summer a little bit, or vice versa or whatnot. So their enzymes never went away, right? Their enzymes have always been on board. They've just been emphasized or de-emphasized depending on their periodization, right? That's why a lot of people talk about periodization in the fitness world, is because they just call it a routine of like dieting and building muscle, and dieting and building muscle, or peaking for an event, or really showing up for a photo shoot or something like that.
Absolutely.
And normal people need to understand that the fact that they're doing that year after year after year is consistently pushing them to be able to execute quickly. Hey, in 6 weeks I'm going to be shredded, or and you know what I mean. But
yep.
Forget to tell all their followers, hey, the reason why in 6 weeks I can be absolutely shredded is because I actually do this basically as my job every year, right?
And I show it every time when I diet. My longest diet was 8 weeks. And people go like, how can you do that? I'm like, because I do it all the time. It's so easy for me. I know exactly what to expect, when I'm going to feel, what I'm going to feel. I know what food to take. I don't even need to write down everything. I can literally just go in like an autopilot. And people go to me, oh yeah, I wish I could do that. I'm like, if you could, if you would be doing it for 15 years straight. It's like, you know, it's kind of given. But so when you lay out your periodization plan, what are things to consider? So we said, yeah, lifestyle, this, and that. But why is it so important to take your lifestyle into account when you are planning your training? Let's say in 12 weeks, you want to go on a holiday with guys, girls, whatever the hell there is, and you want to be as aesthetically pleasing and lean as possible. So what else should be taken into account apart from training and nutrition?
Yeah. So apart from training and nutrition, the other lifestyle factors that I want to know is, where do you live on the planet? So in other words, do you live somewhere where there's 4 seasons? And if you do, how aggressive are those seasons? So if you, for example, live at the 50th latitude, so somewhere Canada or higher, well, that's going to affect what happens in winter, period. I don't care who you are. That amount of dramatic sunlight change is going to affect your mood. It's going to affect the ability to recover, because it could be immunosuppressive, right? So that already starts to turn over the big rocks for me of like, hey, this period of time, because of where you live, is not conducive to high training loads. Okay. So simple as that. That already plans out that whole part of that year for us. It took care of it. And Mother Nature told us, hey, you cannot freaking do this at this time of year. Forget about it. So then it starts making you make other decisions on, where can I do it, right? So then you start placing those in those times a year. And okay, this time of year, winter, isn't conducive for high training loads. What is it conducive for, right? Okay, well, if it's a great time to heal, right? If you're going to be pushing hard the rest of the year, or it's like, okay, what's your travel look like? Maybe you need to plan more travel at this time of year, because you can actually get out of that situation and go to Bahamas, go to Mexico, go to Florida, wherever it is that you have other business endeavors that actually are the counter of low sunlight, right? So you start planning some of your travel to capture some of the benefits of being in winter where you currently live to somewhere where you're going to get more sun to circumvent some of that biological setback that low sunlight will bring, right? You can start planning things like that. There's lots of different ways. So that's a big factor, where they live and how that affects sunlight cycles. Then another big factor is work related. Okay. Does your work go in seasons? If it doesn't, then that gives us a little bit better leeway. But there are some people that are like, you know, in the summer, I actually am my busiest, right? Because that's when I have to do a lot of sales or that sort of stuff. So that starts to, you know, make windows of 1 to 2 months where it's like, these are really the only times where you can really push hard in training. Makes other windows where it's like, oh, these windows actually make sense to do some dieting, because if you're really busy and we feed you correctly, that means we can sustain a pretty damn good calorie deficit, because you're going to be mentally cued in to all the other shit you're doing, and you're not going to be so food focused, right? So we'll feed you correctly and we'll diet you down during that period of time, right? So those are big factors: work, where you live, what the sunlight is going to look like where you live at different years of time. The other thing is family. Do you have a lot of family, or is it just you and your wife, or maybe you're just single? That sort of stuff. That could be second, right, before the job or after the job, depending on where you're at in your life, right? Are you 20 years old and you're just getting started and you need to prioritize your career? Or are you 40 years old and you've been in your career for 20 years already, right? Those are two different scenarios when it comes to jobs, right? So now I need to, like, when I ask for age, I don't just ask how old they are. I ask, how many years have you been doing what you're doing right now for an income, right? Because that matters. Because if it's, you know, if it's like riding a bicycle, you've been doing this for 20 years, then it's not that mentally taxing. Exactly. If you're young and you're an entrepreneur, or if you're young and you're just getting started at, you know, a hedge fund or something, well, shit, that's going to be really stressful for you every time you go to work, right? So that starts to influence things, doesn't it? It starts to influence how hard you can push training and stuff like that.
So it's interlacing, basically acknowledging what kind of period of your life, of your business and everything else you're at, and then plugging it in and adjusting it towards your nutrition and training as well. So because nutrition and training at high intensity will be extremely taxing. And if you have just taken up new job or new business endeavor, let's not do something that's extremely taxing on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we haven't, you know, haven't really touched on, okay, maybe you have family and one of those family members gets diagnosed with some kind of illness. Okay, well, that changes everything all of a sudden, right? That changes maybe for the positive, maybe for the negative. Like some people I know that's like, hey, one of my family members is about to die, and I'm actually really tight with them, so it's going to be very stressful for me to see that happen, you know. And I'm not talking about a disease, you know, maybe it's just it's their grandma, right, or somebody like that. So at that point in time, is it good to push their training or continue to get them to diet really hard? No, it's time to really get back to the basics and let them do what they need to do with their family members. Or the other way around, maybe that one of their family members gets diagnosed with cancer and they see how hard they're fighting and it makes them want to train harder, and like it literally can fuel training. It really depends on their psychology to the situation, right? But it matters, right? To say that it doesn't matter would be an understatement by a long shot.
So when you plan your periodization, in sense of you've taken all the care of that, now it comes to training and nutrition. What are the key components you are looking into improving from? Let's say, is there some kind of timeline for when you work on strengths, hypertrophy, aesthetics, so on and so forth? Or is it based on a feedback based on what they have done before, and how that kind of gets in a way with nutrition as well? So what would you look into? Someone comes to you, hey, David, let's get this ball rolling. I want to get, let's say, lean in May, and it's, let's say, November. What would be first thing that you look into? And also, as a little bit background, he has been physically active, but he's never trained under anyone's guidance. So let's say he knows the benefits of training, but he has never been exposed to what it actually means to be efficient at his training to reach the goal at set time. He's always just seen you train hard and you look great.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, if that person lived in the Northern Hemisphere, it's November, then the very first thing that I would say is we need to start bringing up your aerobic capacity to be on par to handle training loads that will come later. So, volume, right? Let's just simplify it in that form. And what I would start with in November, as far as training goes, would not be voluminous training. It would be more almost like in the middle of the range, strength related. The reason is because and it would be basic body weight stuff to get the aerobic system going, plus maybe, focusing on the walks and everything to continue to fuel that. And the actual weight training part would be more like almost like a 5x5 type style, not necessarily a 5x5, but that type of range, that type of volume, right? Because what I want to do is improve his ability to contract his muscles, which is strength training, right? Like improving his ability to put force to the object that we're moving, right?
So when you talk about cardiovascular health, can you just expand on that? Because a lot of people not get it. We are both very big on, God damn it, be fit, as fit as you can for your size. The fitter you are, the better you're going to get results. The quicker everything is going to happen, the bigger you can grow, the leaner you can get, the stronger you can get. Why is it so important? And where is your, let's say, lowest benchmark for classing someone fit?
Right. So as far as lowest benchmark, I would say if you cannot maintain a heart rate of about 130 without breathing through your mouth,
so nasal breathing only?
Nasal breathing only at a heart rate of at least 130 for 20 minutes minimum. If you can't maintain that baseline, you need improvement.
Like every single person could go to gym, put their hands on whatever, ideally I would suggest them to buy a chest strap to check your heart rate. You can use Apple Watch, whatever, and you can do that test and acknowledge where you're at.
Yeah. If you can't do that, then the priority then comes back to let's get outside in the morning ideally and in the evening ideally and get to, I would say, at least 10,000 steps that morning, right? Like some people are going to be like, wow, that's a lot of steps. I'm like, no, it's not a lot of steps. That's right around, what is 10,000 steps? Less than 2 miles, right? That doesn't even take barely 20 minutes, right? That's going to be 25 minutes, right? And you're going to already have close to 10,000 steps in the morning, and then in the evening, try to do it in nasal breathing only. That's going to be the baseline of aerobic fitness that you need.
So what are limiting factors if they don't have the baseline? We already discussed on video one, but just as a reminder, why would you not go and, hey, let's hit you hard, but they're not even physically ready for doing that? What would be
so as far as the limiting factors are going to be how quickly or how much oxygen you can transport back and forth in exchange with carbon dioxide. The other limiting factor is going to be how well your mitochondria are at shuttling fatty acids into the inner mitochondrial membrane, and how good you are transporting electrons from food all the way through cytochrome 1, all the way to cytochrome 5 at the ATPase. Again, that's biological terminology and stuff, but those are the actual drawbacks that we're trying to improve. Why is that? Because your mitochondria are going to fuel every single process that happens in your body. So if you're physically unfit from an aerobic standpoint, that means your mitochondria are subpar, which means when it comes to weight training and body composition, you're going to perform subpar when it comes to accumulating muscle tissue, when it comes to losing body fat, because those things don't happen in the gym. Those happen after you leave the gym and the rest of the 23 hours of your day. So if your mitochondria is underperforming consistently, well, then you're getting less results. It's that simple.
And I would even go as far and push, because of this inefficiency, now you need to eat even more food if you are trying to gain weight, which is hard gainer and whatnot. which in reality can bypass if you did the homework of just getting fit.
Yeah, and then the same thing with the other paradigm there of people that struggle to lose body fat. Well, why would you lose? Like, what at the end of the day, what needs to happen for you to lose body fat?
You need to
It
burn
needs to be
fat.
burned. It needs to be burned, right? Where does it get burned? In the mitochondria. It's the only place it gets burned. It's the only place that's going to burn it for your body. Like that's a misconception, right? Oh, I need to burn body fat. Well, what does that mean? Who's burning the body fat, right? It's the mitochondria that are burning the body fat. And if they are inefficient, well, then you are inefficient at burning body fat. It's really that simple. So now the key things that we talked about in all of the other videos start to become way more like, oh, those are the nails in the coffin. Those are the things that hold everything together, that make everything work efficiently or inefficiently if you're neglecting them.
Hmm. Yeah. So you sort out your fitness. What would be then you kind of, hey, let's get you stronger. This is funny because I do exactly the same thing, and people go like, "What? Aurelius has never done this way." I'm like, but
Yeah,
it's not. From my perspective, this is if you can't get hold of your own body weight, you got nothing to do in a weightlifting room because you are just building yourself up for injury.
yeah,
So you take care of that. You get your fitness baseline up. You get your fitness your baseline strengths up. You know they can manipulate their own body weight in a certain way. What's next? So what's happening next? We had November till May, June to get lean.
yeah, yeah. So, no, so I would say that the strength phase is going to go probably for at least 8 weeks. Again, because of this whole enzyme upregulation stuff. So if we can get fitness, okay, say they started with me in November, and I know that they live in the northern hemisphere where it's less light. So I already start teaching them, okay, let's compress our food window to only sunlight hours. So only when the sun is up, I want you to eat. I want you to eat in this structure. And that's also when I want you to perform your aerobic activity, and the strength training at any point in time during the day is going to happen for all of November, all of December, and probably into January. Once we get into January, the light cycle is going to start getting longer. So in other words, the days will be getting longer in your favor. That means that now we can take advantage of longer light cycles by eating more food, right? During those light cycles. So
So just
now,
touch up on why it is important for them to eat in that way.
because it starts to teach your body to utilize you're almost biohacking. It wouldn't even be biohacking because this is how evolution has made you, right? The only reason why we get away with eating not during sunlight is because we have this shit called fake lights that we can turn on at any point in time we want and eat and leave on and be mindless about what we're doing. Be intentional about what you're doing. That's how you've been designed. We are diurnal creatures. Don't forget that. I don't care what anybody says about being a night owl. Your biology wasn't made that way. Your biology was made to be diurnal. Okay. So what that means is that enzymes related to food processing and digestion and assimilation and energy expenditure are all related to how long the sun is in the sky, which then means, hey, the light cycle is getting longer. We can eat a little bit more food. That's what's going on internally in your biology. If you're going outside and seeing the sunlight and telling your biology, hey, in fact, the day is getting longer, right?
Yeah,
So
we touched
take
up on previous videos about sunlight, improving your insulin sensitivity, basically
exactly.
nutrition and then
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah. So go back and listen to those if you don't understand what I'm talking about. So then as the light cycles start to get longer, we start bringing in more food. We start bringing in more food. Now training can shift from strength training to more volume training, right? Food goes up, volume starts to go up. And now we can start getting this person a little bit more glycogen dependent, right? And moving glycogen in and out of muscles. They'll start to experience, oh, because I was strong and I learned to move and create force, now we can lower the weight and actually feel the muscles that I've been connecting with from a strength perspective and cause them to make more work. So now we go through almost like a hypertrophy specific phase where we're feeding them up, we're getting more volume in, we're teaching their body to do a lot of work with all the muscles they want to improve, right? And then probably somewhere around March, okay, so this will be the rest of January, all of February, probably all of March. So probably at the end of March or 1st of April, then we go, okay, Now we've been bringing up aerobic capacity this whole time. We brought in some strength so that we can teach you how to move correctly. Then we forced all those muscles that we made connections with to create a lot of work. And now we just maintain that level of work. Okay. And the sun is getting longer and longer. So now it's the end of March and the days are getting longer. That means that now if we can reduce food, we can gain energy through sunlight. People don't understand this. And all the energy in your body does not come from food when sunlight hours are long. You directly get energy from the sun, just like a plant does. Okay. It's not all about the ATP. It's about also how the electrons and protons get divided in all the other cytochromes before the ATPase. That's directly tied to sunlight. So sunlight is getting longer. We reduce some food. Their energy isn't going to drop because they're gaining energy from the sunlight, but they're not gaining calories. You see what I'm saying? Because we're reducing the calories. So now they start to continue to train hard. Their energy's still high, but calories went down. They start to recomposition for those last 8 weeks, and they'll probably lose 2 to 3% body fat. If that was the goal, right? Say they started at 13% or 14%, and now by May, they've gained some muscle. They look better, fuller, and that last little bit is where we reduce 2 or 3% body fat. So they've gone from 14, 13 to 10 or 11%. That's going to be a significant change, especially if in the work up to that, we've improved their energetics, we've improved their energy expenditure and their full bioenergetics of their body.
So you've done all of that. You achieved your physique for May, June, whatever the hell you want to go on holiday looking like. Why is it important to not really force yourself to stay at your leanest for extended periods of time?
Because you'll start to turn off. So it's not the only reason, but you'll start to turn off your ability to continue to move to get leaner or to get more muscular. Like that's just going to be like, I forget, I spaced the word, but like the stimulus is no longer the same. Right.
And let's just be clear that this doesn't apply just to aesthetics. You can't be at your peak strength all year round as well, or at your peak speed or anything like that.
Yeah, and even peak mental capacity, right? Like going back to other things that are going on in your life, right? So your peak mental capacity, yeah, it can be pretty damn good all year round, but there's going to be times of the year where you're just on fire, right? Where you just are like, wow, I can mentally do whatever needs to happen, give me all the workload that needs to happen. All of those fluctuate with the year, the season, and all your other periodization that we talked about earlier. So once you do get to like, going along with the scenario, you get to like 10% body fat around May, then it goes, okay, so what's the next part again of what your life is going to consist of? Okay, let's just say that come June, you're somebody that lives in the Northern Hemisphere, and now summertime is the time where you actually take your family to lots of different places and, vacation a little bit because your kids are out of school and, your wife, that doesn't have a job that keeps you tied to there. So you're going to do quite a bit of traveling, not necessarily for a business perspective, but a leisure perspective, because that makes a difference. If your travel in the summer was going to be business related, then it starts coming back to, okay, what do you want to do with your physique? Do we let it go a little bit or do you want to maintain it? And then what are the minimums for that? But because this person is going through lots of summer vacations, so it's more leisure related. Okay, now it becomes, okay, so if it's leisure related, we can take advantage of that because you're going to be in a different mood, a different mindset, right? So then it goes, okay, we can actually probably train harder, okay, because when you do train, you will be that much more recovered, because in your busyness of traveling and hanging out with your family, you're actually getting more dopamine feedback to yourself from all these people and all the sunlight and all the vacationing and going to new places, that you're probably actually going to be almost biologically preset to work really hard and enjoy it, right? You're going to actually enjoy working harder because you'll get time to spend with yourself and you're spending it with your loved ones. So training in that scenario for me would start to take priority of the thing that's only going to maintain a lot of the baseline that we achieved as far as body composition and strength and all of that. Food, on the other hand, because you are in an enjoyment environment, it's probably going to be a little bit more lax, right? So then the periodization for that summertime looks like this. Hey, food drops down in priority. So now that one becomes, let's only meet the basics. Okay, let's meet the basics day in and day out. If you eat a little extra here, we take it away from the other day, but we still meet the basics, right? As far
So
as
just to emphasize basics, protein intake at sufficient amounts,
yeah,
getting the
fatty
fiber
fish
in.
intake. Yeah, you're the correct amount of vitamins. So you're eating the minimums of your vegetables. You're eating the minimums of essential fatty acids, and you are prioritizing protein so that you don't regress the amount of muscle tissue that you've got gained. And ideally, we overfeed that just a little bit for a little bit of cushion, and then the rest of that becomes pretty relaxed. Hey, I've met all my minimums. I'm actually eating a little bit more food because I'm going out and enjoying myself a lot more. But that's okay because we've put priority above that training. Okay. So when you do go into train, maybe you're not training 4 or 5 days a week like you were when you were dedicated for the fat loss and building phase, but we've cut that down to maybe 3 training sessions. Okay. What are those going to look like? Okay. Well, if you're going to do 3 training sessions, but we're going to make them count. We're going to do full body. We're going to go quite a bit of volume. It's going to be a 2-hour workout, but you're only going to have to do it 3 times a week. And you're going to be more mentally prepared to do it because you're going to enjoy it, right?
And
Because
if
you're
you're mentally fit, healthy, strong already, you're going to really push those 2 hours. And if you're taking more than just one day rest in between, you're going to crave that next training session anyway.
Exactly. So you see, that's when it starts to, okay, these 2-hour training sessions, they are there to probably continue to progress more muscle, but because they're more voluminous and more aggressive, they're also going to be a little bit more taxing, which means that some body fat is going to be used to fuel that recovery. So it starts to somewhat maintain body composition, or at least not let it get out of control. But anything that you do gain is going to be much more biased towards more muscle building. Okay. And then your food is there just for enjoyment and making sure that your baseline physiology isn't falling apart. So that when this phase ends, because all phases end, okay, everything takes a turn to the right or a turn to the
That's
left.
why we call it period. It's not.
Yeah, it's periodization. It's a course, right? You're never going to go in a straight line, and you're never really should be wanting to come back to the starting line. You should be wanting to move forward in an up and down fashion as far as like dieting, training, lifestyle, etc. So at the end of the summer, then it starts setting you up to, okay, is this a busy time of year? Like, or is this actually freeing up some time because kids are going to go back to school? So now it's like, okay, now I actually have 5 days out of the week where I have a period in time where maybe maybe I'm the dad and I drop the kids off to school every morning and I don't actually have to be to work for another hour or two. So now instead of 2-hour training sessions 3 times a week, now let's go, okay, let's do just 45 minutes every single day, right? But we split up in more, depending on the client, what they're wanting, right? Oh, hey, this summer was awesome. I gained even a little bit more muscle tissue, but you know what? I actually want really, really big traps and shoulders now. So, right? Like that's a thing, right? So I want to look
Work
even
never
more.
stops.
Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, traps and shoulders recover freaking fast. Okay. So let's train them every damn day, Monday through Friday. And they look at me and they go, well, how are we going to do that? I'm like, easy. We'll keep the training session short, 30, 45 minutes, trash the hell out of those, keep the minimum for your other body parts. And then we start it. Again, the periodization is I'm making an assumption that this guy's going to have some time because his kids have now gone to school, that he's dropping them off and doing this. You see how periodization, if worked correctly, starts to take advantage of the things that you must do for the things that you want to do, right? And you start placing them in the correct point in time of the year.
Absolutely. So, and when you touch about kids and whatnot, so somebody can be no family, nothing. They have period of getting this certain result. Next year, they're now married, they have kids. They might try to get same goal, but their periodization will be different just because of their lifestyle changes.
Exactly.
And when
Yes.
we go into that, what I'm more interested in is like What are the red flags for you to acknowledge that someone is pushing too hard and changes are not going to happen? And when someone is not pushing hard enough and changes are not going to happen?
Yeah. So one of the key things is heart rate. So
So check your
yeah,
HRVs,
yeah,
resting
something
heart
like
rates
that.
and blood
It can
pressure.
be as simple as just your resting heart rate when you wake up, right? Um, that's like better than nothing, right? So you don't really even need any technology for that. Just your resting heart rate when you wake up in the morning, and that's usually going to be easiest done with like a blood pressure monitor. So you get your blood pressure and your heart rate in the morning,
And
and
probably
what
more
that's
precise as well than anything else.
yeah. And so what it's going to do is it's going to start telling us, oh, if you're overtraining, like say we all of a sudden notice, hey, your heart rate is going through the roof all of a sudden these mornings. What's your blood pressure looking like? Oh, it's actually the same. So your blood pressure is the same, but your heart rate is really high. That starts to cue us in onto, are you having psychological stress, right? Or is this something else? Or on the inverse, they both go up. Heart rate goes up and blood pressure goes up. Now it's like, okay, training is clearly taxing enough that your vascular system is starting to do something that we don't want, right? Or, like you said, somebody's sandbagging it. These numbers are actually not doing anything, right? Even though the training has clearly done something different. Then it starts to go back. Are you actually doing all these sets? Are you actually pushing them to where I want you to push them? Or are you just going through the motions, right? Those are
Yeah.
key attributes of.
Yeah. Are you sticking to your rest periods? Are you actually trying to push it, or just going through motions? Are you
Yeah,
training the right environment as well? You can go through your sets and whatnot, but if someone is out there encouraging you, you're going to work harder.
yeah, and this goes back to the very beginning of this person that we just talked about. In November through December and January, in that period where I was where we wanted to drive up aerobic capacity and strength, I would expect to see their blood pressure to be coming down. I don't care where they're at. If they're already really fit,
Yeah.
then the points going down will be smaller. If they're unfit, I'm going to expect those to move quicker, right? But if they're not moving, it starts to cue me in. Hey, are you doing your cardiovascular work like I asked you to do? Are you actually sticking to your short rest periods for your body weight circuits at the beginning of the workout? And then, sure enough, it's like, I've kind of been skipping those warm ups or something. You see what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if we
it
quickly
happens
start
all the time. And being honest and acknowledging that is a key to making actually plans successful.
yeah.
I had yesterday one of the guys I work with, and he was very open about his nutrition. And I'm like, this is great. You might not have the best diet. Well, you have to stick to this, but you're not sticking to it 100%, but at least you're honest about it. We can
Right.
do something about it. A lot of people will say, hey, this is not working or that is not working, when in reality, they are skipping half of it.
Right.
If someone is on a rehab plan and they just do bread and butter exercises, I'm like, no, you have to do those accessories because you're recovering now. You have to do them. You can't just go and do squat and deadlift and do everything else to strengthen up your knee, ankle, or whatever the hell there is, because your focus is on recovery, not on doing those movements. And this is why periodization is so important, to put it all together. If you don't have time to do all this, you need to draw back, be honest with yourself. If you have a coach, tell your coach, hey, I can't do this, I don't have time. And then you just lay it out in a way that it fits you, instead of doing half the job that someone else expects you to do fully.
Right, because the periodization just goes out the window if you're not executing the plan. Both, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're not helping your coach be able to help you. I mean, that's the whole point of having a coach. It's not just somebody who writes a training plan for you, ideally, right? It's a coach who actually understands these concepts that we're talking about, of like, okay, this is how I get this person to their goal, despite or in spite working with their lifestyle, working with their place that they live at, et cetera, et cetera.
So as a summary, periodization is something that all of us is exposed every single day, from beginning of our life until we drop dead. And we can take advantage of it if we acknowledge that, and we can really mix and match it with everything else. We need to take into account that periodization happens in our physique, in our mental capacity, in our environment, in terms of nature, environment in terms of whom we are surrounded with. You know, you hung out with some guys who are literally dragging you down. Why are you doing this? Why was this is horrible? And then you have a period where you hang out with some guys for a few weeks or months or years, where they just push you, hey, let's get better. That will affect you as well. So as a summary, we all do this already. We can take massive advantage of it if we acknowledge that.
Yes, absolutely. You just start seeking out what matters to you, surrounding yourself with those types of people, those types of scenarios. And next thing you know, you're already going to start doing some of the things that they do in a periodized way, whether you know it or not, right?
Yeah.
And then and then that's kind of what periodization starts to take on for most people. It's just the things that you do unknowingly that just kind of drive you forward in the quest for whatever you're seeking, right?
Yeah, hopefully drives you forward. For some, it's just driving them downwards
Right,
as well.
right.
But you need to
if
acknowledge
you,
that.
yeah, if you know this though, if you know that periodization affects you in this kind of way and can work against you or for you, you can change, right? That's the beauty of being who we are. No, everybody can change. Everybody can change if you focus on the things that actually drive you in the direction that you want the change to go, right? And if you, it starts with knowing exactly what we just talked about today. Periodization influences everything about your life in every single sense, more than we could even drill down in a video. And when you start to understand that, then you start to know, okay, all this other shit that happens in my life actually matters more than my nutrition, more than my training. My training and my nutrition just need to match these to take advantage of continuing.
Absolutely. And training and nutrition is probably two things that are the easiest to control.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, especially training. Like training is like 90 minutes out of your day, 4 days a week. That's nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah, find someone who's knowledgeable enough to just guide you in the right way. But whereas your business, your personal life, it's whatever. You cannot control that at all.
No, at least not to the degree where it's like, hey, I can change everything about my lifestyle. No, not quite that much, at least not immediately. Those changes take they need a lot of potential energy to build up. What that means is to make a change happen in your business, in your family life, in your overall scheme of how you live your life day to day, that takes a lot of energy before it even starts to move, right? You got to put a lot of energy into the business. You got to put a lot of energy into the family to get it to move in the direction that you want. It takes a lot of potential energy to build up, to finally get it to the peak, to tip it in the direction that you want. So those will take a lot more work. Whereas training and nutrition are more along the lines of much shorter time frames for potential energy to build up. That's what that whole enzymatic process was that I was talking about. Yeah. It takes 6 weeks to build up the potential energy of all those enzymatic processes to then tip you in the right direction that you wanted.
Yeah, and then you can just maintain it and live happily ever after.
Until something changes, right? Until your lifestyle tips in a different direction, and now you have to counter that, right? Yeah. That's the beauty of periodization, is it's going to be evolving. You know, it might not change every single year, but just like you stated, if you're single and you've been executing this periodization for a year or two, but then you get married and you have a baby on the way, well, that changed everything, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, I think this is awesome. Again, David, thank you for your time. I think this is brilliant and very useful content for people, just to acknowledge that, hey, everything you do, if you do it in a mindful way, you can get way better results than what is happening now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Awesome.